Hello, everybody, and welcome to a short story about how my grandmother's aunt was erased from history in Sheffield. To begin at the beginning, this is me on the day that I was christened in 1967, and on the left is my grandmother, my father's mother, who we knew as Granny Dorothy, born in Philadelphia in 1899. And this my grandmother with her mother, Rebecca, who died when she was only 6. Rebecca's father, Samuel Morris Wickersham, was a steelman from Pittsburgh. He always called himself Colonel because he had served for 9 months as the second in command of the Pennsylvania 169th during the Civil War. He married 3 times and had 11 children. His first 2 wives both died young. And Frances, who we're looking at here, was the oldest of his 5 children by his 3rd wife. She was known as Bunny to the family. Next after her was Richard, who was drowned in the Johnstown flood of 1889, and after him Rebecca, my great-grandmother. When my great-grandfather remarried after Rebecca died, my grandmother Dorothy was informally adopted by her aunts Frances and Lily, who both lived in England. I should say that I'm very grateful to Wick Hoffman, the grandson of Morris Wickersham, the youngest of the brothers and sisters, who's put together a lot of the material that I've used here. Frances married Robert Hadfield, who, like a lot of members of the family, was a steel man, but unlike them, came from Sheffield rather than Pittsburgh. He invented manganese steel and silicon steel and possibly had a hand in stainless steel, and I'm glad to say that he's commemorated at Sheffield University. I was able to visit Sheffield recently, and I must say it was rather a thrill to see Robert Hadfield's name on the building that houses the Department of Material Science and Metallurgy. It's also worth noting that the university building next door to the Hadfield building is the Pam Liversidge building, named after the first woman president of the Institute of Mechanical Engineers. Robert and Frances Hadfield had no children of their own. As I said, they informally adopted my grandmother, and they didn't have a particularly happy marriage. However, he supported her as a hostess in their homes in France and Sheffield and in London, and in particular, he supported her practically when it came to nursing. During the First World War, Frances set up and ran the Anglo-American Hospital at Wimereux near Boulogne, which operated from 1914 until 1919, funded by Robert but entirely managed by her. During the Second World War, again with support from Robert, she set up what became known as the Hadfield Spears Ambulance Unit, which supported Allied troops in both France and in the Middle East. Both the British and French governments recognised her work, and she was appointed Commander of the British Empire in 1918. So I was very interested to see that the Northern General Hospital in Sheffield has named one of its buildings the Hadfield Wing. How, I wondered, would they have commemorated Frances Hadfield, not a native Sheffielder, but at the same time somebody who contributed a lot to the city and to nursing? And to my dismay, the answer is not at all. Only Robert's name appears on the hospital building. There is no acknowledgement whatsoever of Frances's contribution. She has been quite simply erased from the history of Sheffield. In fact, the Hadfield Wing is just one of 9 buildings at the Northern General Hospital, all of which are named after prominent local people. These people all have something in common, but I'm not quite sure what it is. It's really shocking, isn't it? There are plenty of women who the authorities in Sheffield could have named parts of the hospital after. Just to give you a couple of thoughts, Mary Hutton was a 19th century poet who wrote about the cholera epidemic and about the need for better health care. And Marty Kane, a well-known entertainer who at the end of her life campaigned on behalf of cancer charities. Those would both seem perfectly reasonable choices to me. Meanwhile, if you're looking for a monument to Frances Hadfield, you'll find her in Brookwood Cemetery in Surrey, where she rests together with Robert, with her sister Lily, with her niece Dorothy, who is my grandmother, and with her mother, who is also called Frances.